Thank you very much, Stuart. That was very thought-provoking. We've heard now how we can improve competitiveness by looking after customers, how we can look after our own employees, and I must say every time I see HR, I shall think of human remains in future. But our third speaker is looking ahead, I suspect taking both of those first two attributes there, but is very much tomorrow's man. You know, we all speak rather glibly about information being the wealth producer of the next century. And I suspect that we often say those words without really understanding what that really involves. Well, in Dan Wagner, we have an entrepreneur who founded and today leads a global business doing just that, providing information online. I know because I'm a satisfied customer, and I'm continually amazed at the breadth and depth of information in seconds at the other end of a modem. He'll speak to us about competitiveness keys to business success, but from the aspect of how technology can help. He should know. I give you Dan Wagner. Dan.
Today's conference is entitled Competitiveness, Keys to Business Success. And as David Young just said, I'd like to talk about how technology can help. Because I believe that information is the biggest component in competitive advantage today. Over the last few decades, there have been three stages of the use of information as a competitive weapon experienced by businesses over the last 30, 40 years. Those three stages started with information underload. That was not enough information, too difficult to find, pretty local in content and coverage. Phase two, the advent of computers and fax machines, suddenly information was global, it was everywhere. And then stage three, now there's so much information out there that we simply cannot cope. We call this problem information overload. Too many emails, too much data, staff and colleagues overwhelmed. Before I go any further, let me give you an example of information as a competitive advantage. In 1980, Tim Patterson of Texas developed a piece of software which helped run early versions of desktop computers. He called his software Quick and Dirty Operating System, or QDOS. At the time, the largest computer manufacturer in the world was desperately looking for a piece of software of this type to help them roll out their portable computer range. Tim didn't know about IBM's interest, and therefore when two young guys who did know presented themselves to him with a check for $50,000, Tim accepted. The two guys who made the purchase licensed the software to IBM and in the process created Microsoft. Bill Gates and Paul Allen are two of the wealthiest people on the planet. Tim Patterson might not be very happy about that transaction today, and nor might IBM. Both Tim and IBM might have been able to connect directly had they been in possession of the information, but Gates and Allen had it, IBM and Tim Patterson did not. So let's just cast our minds back for the moment to the 50s and the 60s. The information universe available to businesses at that time was made up of really three things: the daily paper, a trade journal or two, and a market research. The daily paper gave business readers a view of large British businesses with the occasional international headline. The trade journals that the company used to receive was generally regarded by the company as the business intelligence Bible for their industry. Often this was circulated around the office with a stapled circulation list which took 1 week to the next edition to circulate fully. And also this newsletter tended to be quite local in its content. And finally, a market research study, either privately commissioned or purchased off the shelf. This independent document was the basis for most strategic planning. So being competitive in the 50s and 60s meant either you could buy yourself a competitive advantage through consistent, large-scale market research to anticipate customer behavior and attitude, plus information on your competitors. Alternatively, a very small number of people within an organization could focus on analyzing the limited universe of information to help define a strategy for the company. These people tended to be the senior management, and unless a strategic planning department had been set up specifically for the purpose, they were the ones who used to look at the strategy for the company moving forward. So using information as a competitive advantage in the 50s and 60s was limited, local, somewhat hit and miss, and reliant on judgment. A certain amount of guesswork was involved. Then came the 70s and the 80s. The information universe was basically the same as in the previous 20 years, but more international business magazines were available, and television started to play a role as it became interested in business programs for which they found a ready audience, eventually leading to prominent business people becoming household names. But significantly, computers, fax machines, and photocopiers started to impact the distribution of information within a company. Databases of information archiving news clippings and company reports were set to provide a much broader and more comprehensive information universe, which, if trained to use correctly, could, in specialist hands, be used to supplement special project needs. This meant that more employees were able to contribute and be exposed to the strategic process. But this was still a paper-based process, which resulted in huge amounts of information wastage, where documents of enormous value to a current decision or discussion were left rotting and undiscovered in a filing cabinet 10 feet away from the boardroom table. There was, however, during this period, a glaring illustration of what was to come and its potentially devastating implications. Many of us in the UK refer to this prophet of the future as Big Bang. Big Bang turned the financial services market on its head. Suddenly, advanced information systems altered the nature of financial markets all over the world. Prices, news, opinions, even rumor started to impact trading decisions within seconds of availability. This meant that either you had the information or you were no longer competitive. And as most of you will know, many institutions were felled by this dramatic re-engineering of their business practices. Back in all other companies during the same period, computerization was all about automation. Can you automate the accounting processes so that we can get our profit and loss accounts out faster? Can you automate the factory processes so that we can put more products through the production line? Can you automate the inventory processes? The just-in-time revolution in inventory management was critically dependent on the internal and external distribution of highly accurate information. These changes in themselves in automation bestowed competitive advantage, but not across all employees of a company, only within the respective areas that they were focused on. Today, we are on the brink of an information explosion that is beyond the comprehension of all of us in this room today. An explosion that will make Big Bang sound like a muffled pop. But unlike Big Bang, it won't happen on a specified date so that you can all be prepared for it. It will creep up on most of you like a deadly assassin and strike when it will already be too late to react. In fact, it has been sneaking up on British businesses for the last 4 years. And this significant revolution is being brought about by the internet, the largest network of connected computers in the world, all sharing and disseminating information across the globe. The internet is not a place made up of nerdy technologists wearing anoraks and glasses. It is in fact dominated by businesses. Over 70% of World Wide Web sites are corporate, which grew from less than 20% the year earlier. And the internet has in turn spawned the intranet, an individual company's internal network of computers, all sharing information in a standard format. Suddenly, everything is a controllable piece of data. That means that you can utilize it whenever you need to. This basically means that with the internet, all the information in the world that is public in any shape or form is available for analysis within seconds of its publication and thereafter stays forever. And the intranet is a company's private collection of both internal and external information that, if fully utilized, provides your company with a competitive advantage. So competitiveness today and for the future is, firstly, determining exactly the information from the huge volume out there that is relevant to your company. And this is not an easy task, because like an overweight child in a sweet shop, you want everything, but if you take it all, you'll be unable to digest it. And secondly, making sure that the relevant information that has been identified flows internally to all the appropriate people. Only then can you compete effectively in the global market of today, utilizing the entire corporate resources that you have available to you. These steps represent the enterprise shift to what is now being called knowledge management. Knowledge management is what is going to stop you suffering from information overload.